Hello, I'm here on my porch in Westford, and it's a beautiful day. Early summer. It's in the low 80s, but feels hot. Still not quite used to this kind of heat. Hello. This is me. My own face and voice. Captured. My name's Steve Babbitt. I've just been listening to a recording on YouTube on my uncle on his little YouTube channel put up years ago some recordings of his grandmother, my great-grandmother, Viola Babbitt, Viola née Passy. Her maiden name is Passy. Of her just talking about her life. She's talking about how Mormons don't drink coffee and how the cowboys drink coffee. How the cowboys are dependent on the coffee, and how the cowboys, when they're breaking in the horse, they are. So I think her father or someone didn't like how rough they were with the horses, but it was just, as she put it, it just came down to they like to show the horses boss, and presumably they need to show the horses boss. They don't just like to, but I don't know. But she was going on and on. She's talking about dresses, what kind of dresses you wear to a dance, and how her sister is older and prettier, and I think it's more guys or something. But yeah, I come from an old Yankee family that came over to Massachusetts, came through Plymouth somewhere around 1638 to 1640, I think, somewhere in those 3 years. And in 1880s, so let's see, there was Edward. He was the first, came from England. He had, I think, 3 generations of Elkanahs, and then there was a David, and the David moved to Cincinnati, Ohio. I'm missing 1 or 2 generations. But there was a David who moved to Cincinnati, Ohio in the 19th century, I believe. Yeah. And then he was a little, so this is the Civil War. He was a little too old and sickly, and supposedly his sons were a little too young, I guess. There were probably younger men than them fighting in the Civil War, but they didn't end up fighting in the Civil War. Anyway, my great-great-grandfather, his son, David Babbitt, and his 4 brothers, Charles, George, William, or Billy, and I think Edward. They all moved out to Arizona from Cincinnati, and they started I guess like a conglomeration of business. Basically they were cattle barons. Is the coolest way to say it, but they had a lot of businesses. They had a mercantile store, like a general store basically, in Flagstaff, Arizona, which was a very new town at the time. I think it had only been settled for about 10 years. And so they had a mercantile business, and they had cattle ranches, and they eventually got into in the Indian trading posts, dealing in Navajo trinkets, Navajo blankets, and stuff like that. And all that's still around. None of it is owned by people that I know personally. I assume some of it must still be owned by people with the name of Babbitt. My father's father, my grandfather, he owned a ranch, but he sold it, I think, probably before I was born. He owned some of the ranch land, though, some Babbitt ranches. So that's a little brief history of my family. My father was born and raised there in Flagstaff also, and then in California met a girl from the Berkshires, a girl from Lenox, Massachusetts, my mother. And now our branch, our line of the family is back here in Massachusetts. Here I am in Westford, Massachusetts, not far from Taunton, where where Edward Babbitt, first American Babbitt, first settled. Not far from Plymouth, of course, either. But relatively far from where I grew up, which is in western Massachusetts, closer to the Berkshires, not quite that far west, but I think they had a lot less distractions and stimulation back then, those men of old who founded those enterprises. And that's my excuse. Overstimulation, distraction. The information age. Far too much opportunity for passive consumption. Very little demand for activity, production. Just, it's very easy. Very easy to just not do very much. Very easy to just not accomplish very much. But that's all gotta come to an end, because I gotta accomplish at least something to continue the line, and that is one of my most serious goals in life, is to carry on the line, to make something of myself, to have sons, and pass on to them who I am, and what I know, and what I believe. That is all.